My name is Amy Boulanger. I serve as the Executive Director for the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, or IRMA. Thank you so much for joining us today for a webinar about the release of audit reports for two mines in Africa, the Kolomela and Sishen iron ore projects. Next slide, Alan. I'm going to give you a quick sense first of how we will run this 1-hour webinar. So we will offer a brief overview of IRMA and how it works, and how an IRMA audit works. And we're going to go quickly with this. We've received feedback from a number of you who listened to our most recent webinars and really asked for less background on IRMA and more time to hear from the mining company and about what they've learned in these audits, and for you to have time to ask questions. So if you see us moving quickly, it's to leave you that time. But if you have questions, at the end of this session, we will have ample time at the 30-minute point for questions and exchange with the audience. If you have those questions, please type them into the Q&A function at the bottom for your question and answers. You don't need to use the raised hand, but rather just type into the Q&A, and we'll be able to see each other's questions there and respond to them both in writing there or live in the webinar. Joining me today is IRMA's Africa Regional Lead, Davidso Muchawaya, who serves support particularly to civil society across Africa and comes to us with a career of experience in auditing herself as well. Also, we have Pranil with the Kumba Iron Ore head, and also Sarah with Anglo-American, who will be introducing themselves more as they begin their sections. Okay, next slide, Alan. So why is a system like IRMA needed? Go ahead, next. We live in a world today with increasing demand for a set of materials that go into the products that we use every day, from lithium and nickel and cobalt, copper, iron ore, and others. And increasingly, these materials are under added demand for their association with energy transition and working to move away from oil, gas, thermal coal, and other fossil fuel-based materials. But even as we work towards energy transition, we have communities around the world under stress from climate change effects already, from droughts, floods, increasing conflict, impacts to water. And we also have increasing pressure and the impacts that come with industrial scale extraction and mining, and skepticism that change in this space will be legitimate and real. And hearing those concerns, we have end brands who make the materials, take the materials from mining and make them into cars, technology, jewelry, and other products, hearing those concerns and wanting to do more responsible sourcing, and in fact being held to account for more responsible sourcing by legal structures around the world. Next, Alan. In the context of that, we have a standard which is now, it is voluntary. It does not have the force of law, and the implications and consequences that go with laws are the most important tools that we each have. But in many cases, laws are not sufficient enough to reduce environmental and social harms that go with extraction. And we have offered this standard, which is now the world's most detailed and comprehensive standard to drive value for companies to go further in protecting social and environmental values. It can be used at mines anywhere in the world, and it is used not at a company level, but at each mine site is audited. And so that's what you'll be hearing today, is about the audits at the Kolomela and Sishen sites. And IRMA standard is unique in that it is equally governed. Go ahead, Alan. And by equally governed, I'll show you in just a moment the board of directors of IRMA. This is first a slide of the more than 20 chapters in the IRMA standard. So when a site is being measured against the IRMA standard, it's not looking at just worker health and safety or just the issues of greenhouse gas emissions or how is a community engaged, but meant to be a comprehensive review of performance across a full range of issues and impacts that go with mining. Okay, Alan. This is the slide that I mentioned earlier describing IRMA's equal governance. IRMA is governed by 6 houses, each with 2 seats. They have this equal governing authority, not only by each having two, but each having veto authority over the others. So you have in this case, NGOs, mining affected communities, and labor unions working across the table from private sector mining companies, their customers, and the finance sector. Okay, Alan. But beyond just those on the board, there is also a robust set of members behind as well in both the private sector and in NGOs. Next slide, Alan, and we'll turn now to Davidzo Muchawaya, who's going to share a bit more of the details on how does an IRMA audit work and what did Anglo American and Kumba need to do in coming into this process. So go ahead and forward, Alan and Davidzo.
Next slide, please, Alan. Thank you so much, Amy. So I'm going to take you through the IRMA audit process and how it is all accountable. Next slide. The IRMA audit process is a journey which starts with the mining company completing a self-assessment questionnaire. This progresses to a third-party assessment that is done by independent auditors. And the IRMA cycle is 3 years with a midterm review at 18 months. And after that, a report is reports are issued both when the site assessment is done as well as at the 18-month surveillance audit. Next slide, please. IRMA audits are publicly noticed. This is done by the auditors themselves, IRMA as well as the mining company. When the auditors are doing the audit, they interview beyond the mining site. So they interview CSOs, government officials, impacted communities, in addition to the workers which they interview at the mining site. And at the end of the process, as indicated, reports are issued, and these reports are publicly available. We share this on our website, and we'll be sharing where you can find them towards the end of the slides. Next slide, please, Alan. And coming on to the Kolomela and Sishen audits, I'd like to also share the context in which those audits happened and the notable firsts. So these are the two first iron ore mines to be audited against the IRMA standard in Africa. It's the first also IRMA to have these mines, with iron ore commodity being audited in Africa, which is a great thing. And this also presents an opportunity to improve the supply chain in the steel sector, both from the mines to the markets. And just to provide a context, this audit started during COVID, and this is a learning curve for us, continues to be a learning curve for both IRMA and the mining sites that are being audited. And we greatly welcome feedback as we continue to learn through the process. Next slide, Alan. And just to share what you may find in the audit reports, the audit reports present a summary of findings, the audit outcome, as well as the scores. So these are scores that are presented per principle and per chapter, and we greatly encourage you to access the report so that you can get into depth in terms of how the performance of the mine was measured, the scores which they received for the chapters and principles that are highlighted. Next slide, please. And in terms of the achievement levels that a company can get, there are 4 levels. However, for IRMA 50, IRMA 75, and IRMA 100, a company or a mining site should go through a third-party audit, and they should share their reports publicly. Next slide. And how would stakeholders use the audit reports? Different stakeholders, next slide, Alan. Different stakeholders can use these reports differently. For example, mining communities, mine workers, and NGOs can use the reports to understand areas of improvement, track implementation of corrective action plans, advocate for changes, and purchasers may also use the reports to understand the operations of the mine site, understand the perspectives of communities and workers, and also use their unique leverage to seek improvements. And other mining companies can learn from Anglo's strengths and challenges, and government staff can also use the IRMA standard as a template to strengthen the laws. Next slide. And we do have resources that we are sharing where you can find the reports. They are available on the IRMA website. And if there are any questions specific to the mine site operation, we gladly forward them to Pranil. and Benji. And if there are any questions relating to the audit firm, you're most welcome to forward them to IRMA CVS. And if there are any complaints or feedback that you have for IRMA, I would gladly welcome those. You can provide them, or you can file them through our website or via WhatsApp, or you can, send them through our email. We're continuously seeking to improve, and we gladly welcome your feedback as this helps us to improve. And as I hand over to Anglo, I would like to acknowledge and appreciate Anglo, the Kumba Iron Ore division, for putting all their metal mining sites to be reviewed under this independent review as we have today. And with that said, I will hand over to Prenell.
Thank you, Davidson. Thank you to the IRMA team. So a really good warm hello to everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on this webinar following the release of the IRMA audit results. We at Kumba are absolutely proud, as Kumba being the first African iron ore operation to be verified against the IRMA standard for responsible mining. Now, at the outset, I need to say thanks to really the stellar work from our teams, both at Sishen and Kolomela mines, who achieved a performance level of 75%. In my slot, I will provide an overview of Kumba before taking you through our audit results, highlighting our strengths, areas of improvement, our learnings, and opportunities for further stakeholder engagement. I'm also joined on this call by my colleagues who were actually core to the team for this particular audit and very close to the process. And they are on this call, and you will be able to see them. Have our executive head of safety, health, and environment, Nandi, our principal in environment and land management, Lucia, our specialist in social performance, Benji. Now, Benji was also our IRMA lead for Kumba. And we also have our Anglo-American Responsible Mining Program Manager, Sarah. And they will also be available to take some of your questions later on when we go into Q&A. So Benji, moving on to slide 2, I'd like to just give a quick overview of our Anglo operations. Now, as you can see, Anglo-American is a leading global mining company with products that are essential ingredients in almost every aspect of modern life. The group's portfolio of world-class competitive operations provides many of the future-enabling metals and minerals for a cleaner, greener, more sustainable world, and helps meet the growing everyday demands of billions of our consumers. Next slide, Benji. I would like to just do a quick overview on Kumba and where we are situated in our operations. So just for context, Kumba is a business of Anglo-American and is a leading value-adding supplier of high-quality iron ore to the global steel industry. We operate the Sishen and Kolomela mines in the Northern Cape province in South Africa. And we believe that our high-quality iron ore products have a critical enabling role in a decarbonizing world and can ensure we meet the growing demand for green steel. I'm pleased to say our purpose at Kumba is to reimagine mining, to improve people's lives, using innovative thinking, enabling technologies, and collaborative partnerships to shape an industry that is safer and better harmonized with the needs of our host communities. As a company, we export iron ore to customers around the globe, including approximately 50% to China, 50% to the rest of the world, and then the rest to Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea, as well as to a number of other countries in Europe and the Middle East. An important fact to mention, and I'm pleased to say this, that Kumba is the largest private sector employer in the Northern Cape in South Africa, with over 77% of our workforce employed locally. I will now move over to a slide that would give you a quick overview of our sustainable mine plan. So Benji, if we can move over to that slide. On this slide, what I'd like to depict is that, as I mentioned, in order to deliver on our purpose, to reimagine mining to improve people's lives, we have developed the Sustainable Mine Plan, and for abbreviation, we call it the SMP, which is built around 3 ESG sustainability pillars: environmental, social, and governance. And these are aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and very closely, and pleased to say this, to the 4 IRMA principles, reflecting our approach as Kumba in managing our ESG performance. Now, under each of these pillars, we have a number of stretch goals that we must reach as a company by 2030. And they are deliberately ambitious and designed to challenge us to lead and innovate. And if you want to read up more about the goals, I mean, the goals are included in the reports, as well as Kumba's sustainability reports. And we give a good tracker in terms of how we progress towards these goals. So on the slide, you can see that, broadly, these goals have been developed so that we want to ensure we work towards maintaining a healthy environment, building thriving communities, and developing trust as a corporate leader. Next slide, Benji. Just a quick snippet in terms of our Sishen mine. Some facts here. So Sishen mine is situated in a small mining town called Katu in the Gamagara local municipality, and has operated for over 7 years without a fatality. Sishen employs over 7,000 employees, and in 2023, Sishen produced 25.4 million tons of iron ore. And as mentioned earlier, Sishen proudly achieved IRMA 75. Giving a quick look at Kolomela. Kolomela mine is situated in a small town called Posmasburg in the Sansabanya local municipality, and has operated about 10 months without a fatality as at 31st December 2023, and has been fatality-free for just over a year to date. Kolomela employs over 2,000 employees, and in 2023, Kolomela produced 10.3 million tons of iron ore. And again, Kolomela, a proud achievement of IRMA 75. So moving on to an area, and I thought it is important to give this fact base in terms of showing how we create value for our various stakeholders, and what we call as a company enduring stakeholder value. And it is important because this really helps position what we do in terms of driving value in our communities, but backing it up with the solid facts. So we as Kumba contribute to communities directly and indirectly through the taxes and royalties we pay, jobs we create, local workforces we upskill, local business opportunities we generate, and the education and community health initiatives we support. Now, our contribution, and I would say socio-economic contribution for 2023 amounted to more than 70 billion rand, as depicted on the slide, with these various buckets shown on the slide. And, too many highlights to go through, but I guess two important ones for me to mention is that we continue to commit to supporting government that extends beyond collaborative work. And last year it included contributing 10.9 billion Rand in income tax and mineral royalties to the national fiscus. We also contributed to social value by procuring over 23 billion Rand of goods and services from BEE businesses, of which, and then very importantly, more than 6 billion Rand were from our local Northern Cape host community suppliers. So that just gives you an overview in terms of how we drive shared value. I would now like to get into some of the detail of the IRMA implementation, and from a Kumba perspective, just provide some timelines during which the audit had taken place. So we started off with the initial IRMA assessment for both sites in 2021, with the auditors conducting the initial stage 1 desktop audit to review our self-assessment ratings and evidence that we provided in August and October in 2021. The auditors, IRMA, that was appointed, conducted a virtual audit in October and November of 2021, as the planned stage 2 assessment could not go ahead due to the outbreak of COVID at the time. The stage 2 on-site verification audit was then undertaken in March 2022. Following the completion of the stage 2 on-site verification, Kumba sites elected to use an IRMA early corrective action plan to address some of the shortfalls that was identified in the audit. Now, after an agreed period of implementing our corrective action plans, the auditors then conducted a follow-up verification audit in April 2023 last year. And here we are now. The IRMA results were actually released the end of last month, 27th March this year, with both Sishen and Kolomela achieving IRMA 75. So I'd like to move on to just talk about some of the lessons learned. Benji, if we can go on to the next slide, and how we set ourselves up for continued success. With IRMA standards and audit protocol having been fairly new to our operations, we have also learned a lot of valuable lessons during the audit process together with the auditors, which will help us achieve greater success in future audit verifications. And these include collaboration, where we would see better between our business group leads, subject matter experts, and actually sharing pockets of best practice within the teams. Certainly looking at amplifying stakeholder engagement, preparing a little earlier for broader stakeholder engagement, and clearly defining the communication plan both internally in the business and externally. Training definitely as an area of improvement. So us ensuring that we have continued capacity building for our sites and business unit IRMA leads. We can certainly do better at data management, so improving evidence preparation and the cross-functional data management structure. So moving on to a very quick snapshot of our results shown on this slide. As you can see, at Sishen, we excelled in principle 1 and 3. So that is the business integrity and social responsibility, while more attention is required in terms of principle 2 and 4, that is planning for positive legacies and environmental responsibility. At Kolomela, all 4 principles averaged a score of 80%. So moving on to what we call we are doing well at. And just to flag a couple of these. So overall, both sides have performed really well, particularly in terms of business integrity and social responsibility. And to highlight a few of the underlying areas of our strength, on environment, we have comprehensive biodiversity management plans and a well-established surface and groundwater monitoring program or programs in place. On social, we have well-implemented cultural heritage plans and procedures, as well as embedded and accessible grievance mechanisms. On governance, we were able to demonstrate safety, health, and environment management systems with additional controls for vulnerable people, and also really great, robust permitting processes to support legal compliance. So what is it that we are working on, or areas of improvement? We have also identified some areas of improvement that we are working on, but these are not, limited to any specific themes, but just to call out a couple. On environment, definitely ongoing work in terms of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And we have plans in place through the solar PV projects that are planned for both Sishen and Kolomela. Certainly improvement and management on non-mineral residue and waste facilities. On social, whilst this is in place, but just expediting the development of community and community health and safety management plans, and continuous implementation and tracking of our community development projects. On governance, we need to address the reporting expectations on revenue and payments with regards to transparency, and then update the human rights due diligence assessments. So moving forward, how we plan to engage continuously, we have a number of stakeholder engagement channels in place, and we continue to identify and prioritize the most material interests of our stakeholders, and we have a very comprehensive engagement strategy in place. And here I just chose a few to show that we collaborate both on the internal and external platforms that we have, and just listed a couple of examples in terms of the channels that we use. On the external front, business forums, environmental forums, stakeholder engagement days, and local accountability engagements that are ongoing. On the internal side, we still certainly spend as a leadership a lot of time in the field. We have monthly leadership engagement calls with our ExCo, and pleased to say that we have weekly sustainability days held at sites, and this is ongoing. So moving on to implementation of corrective actions. To ensure continuous improvement, we are busy reviewing the final audit reports. So to fully understand the gaps identified, we will then conduct a root cause analysis that will inform the corrective action plan for all the non-conformances identified. The corrective action plan implementation will include IRMA audit surveillance and re-verification. So that's it from my side for now. And I just want to say a huge thank you for the opportunity to share our journey. We are very proud of our team's efforts and the outstanding progress made across both of our operations towards promoting responsible mining practices. And as part of Kumba's commitment, we continue to lead in environmental, social, and governance ESG practices. We are dedicated to delivering premium iron ore to our customers, and making sure that they remain quality because they help to reduce carbon emissions in the steel making process, and really helping our customers to meet the growing demand for responsibly sourced materials in an efficient and independently verified way. So thank you. I hope you found those lessons helpful, and I will hand back to the IRMA team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Praneel. And I will remind everyone who's listening in, we still now have 30 minutes for exchange with the Kumba and Anglo-American staff, or with IRMA if you have questions. There's a Q&A box that you have access to. And if you go to the bottom of your screen and you don't easily see it like mine, there are 3 dots on the bottom right-hand side. And you can click on that, and then you'll see in the list there, I hope, Q&A, and you can type in your questions, and we'll be taking them there. And we do have some questions in already. So I'll be taking those. And just to remind you all, if you have, as Davidzo said earlier, questions for Kumba staff like Praneel, or the Anglo-American team like Sarah Makumbe, please don't be shy. Kumba and Anglo staff, if you can use the chat to address all people in meeting and provide email addresses where people can connect with you with questions they might have in follow-up. An IRMA audit report is best viewed as the beginning of a conversation, not the end of it. It's sharing with you what is verified performance of what's been seen on site, but that is still just one snapshot in time and a limited set of data points. So we hope that those of you who are either customers or investors, who are community residents or NGOs working as allies to residents in the region, will pick up the reports and look in depth. Flip through it. It's more than 150 pages. While that's daunting for some, it's meant to give you rich detail of what auditors see on this site. And it's a great place for you to begin to have that conversation that Praneel is opening with you on what will they work on to improve practices at the site. One question that we have for you, Praneel, is, or Sarah, is, as you have engaged in doing this audit, have you had steel-making customers interested in the fact that you are engaged in the IRMA process, and have you seen yet any benefits of that, or contracts with customers like that?
So, yep, I'm happy to add some points to this, and Sarah, you can come in. But I think certainly there has been a huge interest, not just now when we announced our results, but if we go back a couple of years when third-party certification was not really well known globally, and when we were first introduced to IRMA, we put ourselves forward in terms of wanting this type of transparency, and therefore, we made this a goal for Anglo-American company-wide to go through the IRMA audits. It's interesting that customers have been indicating interest to show to have a sense of the certification of responsible iron ore materials, to know where the materials are being derived from, but not in terms of just making sure that we are supplying premium iron ore, but making sure that we are supporting environmental and social obligations. If we had not taken the IRMA audit, there were a couple of years back when we had customers who said, well, we will actually, come forward and pay for these audits to happen. We will send people through so that we can have some form of verification. So that sort of answers the question in terms of how serious they are taking this certification process. And certainly now that we have had the results in terms of having shown that we have reached IRMA 75%, certainly we hope to see the benefit in terms of contracts coming through from customers. And I'm very pleased to say, I think it was the day before we announced the result, we actually had customers visiting Kumba from abroad, and they were absolutely pleased with the result. For them, this was excellent news, and we certainly will be being more transparent with them and providing them with regular updates. So, Sarah, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, thank you, Pranil. Agreed with what you're saying and the feedback we're getting for customers. I would like to just add that the standards landscape is an ecosystem. So there is another standard called the Responsible Steel Standard that is emerging, that is now in practice, and they are also looking to recognize responsible sourcing of steelmaking products such as iron ore. So if we are supplying to customers who want to be considered under the Responsible Steel Standard, we are in a very good position because of firstly taking up the IRMA standard and then being able to attain such a high achievement level, because through the Responsible Steel Standard, we are then recognized as a leading responsible supplier of raw materials against that standards criteria, which is also something that would be beneficial for the manufacturer who wants to be recognized as a responsible steel manufacturer. So I think the the value chain ecosystem is one that's still emerging, but I think it will get stronger with time as people understand what you get out of the audits and how that works as well. So that's what I would add to Pranil's answer as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Pranil. Michelle Smith is on this call as well and on video. She is IRMA's Director of Assurance, who oversees the rules and the process for auditing of mines in this. And Michelle, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot that in what we had a question from someone saying, is an audit a one-off thing or will it have to be done at some point? So could you share with this audience what will happen next after this audit? What will Anglo American and Kumba need to do to stay engaged?
Thanks, Amy, and thank you for this question. I think it's really an important one to clarify. So this is the first audit of these facilities that is now a journey for these sites as they continue to progress their programs, their performance, their engagement with communities. Our audits occur on a 3-year cycle. So in approximately 3 years from now, there will be another full scoped audit that will occur that will look at all of the requirements and verify that the site is continuing to maintain, but hopefully improve their performance against all of the IRMA requirements. In between those two audits, we have a surveillance audit. The surveillance audit is a bit more modest in scope. And the auditors will return to the site. They will still conduct interviews. They will conduct community engagements. But the purpose of that audit is really to verify performance against critical requirements, of which there are 40 in the IRMA standard, and verify that corrective actions are on target as planned following this audit. And then, verify other areas of performance that the auditors may have felt needed to be verified during the surveillance audit. So that's what our audit cycle looks like going forward. I also want to just take a moment to comment on the word certification because it's been used. And we've just recently published a blog on our website, which explains why IRMA doesn't use the word certification. So when we look at these audits and we speak of the site's performance, we work really closely with the sites on how to talk about their performance and how to make claims. But there's no certification that comes from an IRMA process. We see performance as being continuous improvement. We measure performance and report a score on that. And so it's not a pass-fail. And it's not intended to provide a blanket endorsement for a site's performance.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I see that Alan has put into the chat for anyone who's interested to click on it, the blog that Michelle referenced on why we don't use that word. And acknowledging again, we are amidst the first 20 audits of mines in the world against the IRMA standard. So if you open this report and it's not either organized in a way that makes sense to you, you can't find easily what you're looking for, or you don't feel that the information is accurate, we definitely want to hear back from you. Questions, added insight. We are happy to meet with any stakeholders, Indigenous rights holders one-on-one to share insights on these reports and also hear how IRMA can improve what we share with you on it. Okay, Pranil, I'm going to bring a question to you. There is tremendous attention around the world on the risks of mine waste and the safety and health risks associated with mine tailings. So there's a question about whether or not the tailings, particularly at Sishen, but at all mines, are they mapped and publicly available? And do safety issues around this include citizen participation? So to the extent that you're addressing issues of transparency and accountability and how mine waste is managed, they'd like to hear more about this. So again, specifically, are they mapped and publicly available and including citizen participation?
Yeah, absolutely. I can direct the question to Nandi. Nandi, do you want to take this one?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pranil. So, yeah, absolutely. Our facilities at Sishen, so I'm quickly going through your question again. A lot that in Sishen are mapped out publicly. Apologies, I did not see my videos off. There we go. So the facilities are mapped up, and if you can check, we went as far as declaring what we have within, you know, a session through the global industry standard on tailings management in terms of displaying our facility, the volumes that we carry, and our social responsibility around that. So in simple terms, to answer your questions, yes. And there has been participation of interested and affected parties through that process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Follow-ups, welcome on that. I'm going to give you another provocative one. You had a question asked. You are meeting about 75% of the potential of the IRMA standard for what IRMA is describing across stakeholder groups as best practice. So there is interest to know, are you satisfied with IRMA 75 or are you looking to reach IRMA 100? The 1/4 of the standard that could still be met. Are you hoping to achieve that?
Is this the question for Kumba?
It is the question for whoever is going to get you that last stretch, I think.
Yeah. So absolutely. Look, I mean, for us, 75% has been an absolute great achievement. And for us, I guess it's more important for us not to necessarily be chasing scores right now. Whilst we're absolutely thrilled with IRMA 75%, and having, I guess, done really well over the 400 requirements and the 40 critical requirements, it's about us making sure that the gaps and the opportunities for us as a business are addressed. And I guess with that will come the right score and achievement at the right time. But for me, if I have to talk on behalf of the team, 100% would be great. But for us in the near term is just making sure that we continuously progress from where we are at this point in time.
Thank you, Pranil. I'm going to turn the hard questions back on us right now. This is a hard question on IRMA. You all can breathe for a little bit, and we'll put the hot seat to me, which is a question, and Davidzo and Michelle, feel free to chime in from this if you want as well. But there's a question saying, really, is it not certification? Is this not pass fail or some type of endorsement from IRMA? If not, then why is the European Union and others saying use IRMA as some type of approval when it comes to due diligence? And if I can say something on this, I understand the concerns that there are with greenwashing. There are many things out there, whether you pick up your box of cookies or other, that have little green checks on the box, and most people don't know what they mean anymore. Why does IRMA not use this certification is for exactly this reason. There is decreasing trust in that, and especially when we're talking here not about cookies, but about the tremendous impacts that come with industrial scale mining. And so it's exactly why, while many standards use pass and fail, they set the bar and either you pass it or you fail it. IRMA only has the support of civil society and now customers and investors by setting a high bar, which is to describe best practice. We know that many mines around the world are not at that point. The laws and the jurisdictions they've been have not set incentive for that. The markets have not differentiated for that, but we hope they will. And we hope they will pick up the IRMA standard and increasingly integrate it into laws. But the purpose of being a detailed audit report, and nowhere else are you going to find independently verified 150 pages of information, is so that IRMA engagement is not itself a proxy for certification, good enough, mining, etc. It is that you do open those pages and see what they say. It is to offer you the increased detail on performance on what's happening at the site, and whether you are an end brand who is making cars or building materials, or you are a labor union or advocates to local community residents, that you can find information there on what did auditors actually see, what is the performance there, and that you can follow up. So thank you for asking that hard question back to us, and please continue to hold IRMA accountable for the information we share through this. Okay, I'm going to bring a question back to Kumba or Anglo. First, they offer you congratulations on this work. And from the point of view of deciding to do this, they are interested in what challenges you might have faced in getting people on board, including management support, to engage in this, and then how long did it take you?
Yeah, thank you. So I think I'm going to ask Sarah to give an overview in terms of the culture change in terms of and change management in terms of what we've been doing from an Anglo-American perspective, and then probably Benji can just hone in on some of the work that needed to be done at a business level, at site level. But I think, Sarah, just from an Anglo-American perspective, it would be useful, because this is not necessarily just done for Kumba business. Many of our operations throughout Anglo-American have gone through the IRMA audits, and this has certainly taken place at a group-wide level. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Pranil. So yes, indeed, as Anglo-American, we have done audits at 8 sites with 7 reports now out in the public domain. I think this question is a good question on how long did it take to get a team on board and the change management involved. So if I just think back of when this was announced as one of our targets on the Sustainable Mining Plan that Pranil alluded to in 2018, it took a while to firstly get the appropriate resources who could manage the program, because we're looking to get 19 operations audited by, through a third-party certification by 2025. So that was going to be a comprehensive program. Then we also needed to understand the IRMA standard and other standards we've adopted. And I think, it takes time to understand the language that's in IRMA. We then had to design a process of implementing this IRMA certification. So our process involves a BU and site preparation phase, where we identify, who's going to be the project manager, who are the right people to answer the questions for each of the chapters. And I just want to add that what we found as we went through this process is that we already do the work that's prescribed in the IRMA standard. There are people who are accountable for those different chapters already at site. but there's still a learning process of how, or the language we use as Anglo-American and how it's been written in the IRMA standard to just translate it. And I think it takes time to just read through it, understand what kind of evidence, would help us to be able to, show that we are conforming to a particular requirement. And I think there was a process to motivate the team, why they needed to go through that learning curve. There was also a process to motivate the site leadership team, why they needed to release the resources to do this work. And I think for us, it went back to why was this important for us as Anglo-American? We wanted to be able to have a way of demonstrating our sustainability credentials that we could share with our customers, with investors, with the community. So I think it's having people buy into that vision and process. If we think back a few years later now, with the reports out, IRMA is well known. I don't need to explain to colleagues the work we do around IRMA. It's well understood now. We've got company-wide support for it. So it will take time, but once you have the support and people know why this is important, the buy-in is there. As we've done surveillance audits, such as the recent Unki audit, people now understand what the IRMA standard says. Our own internal standards are being updated to make sure that they keep up with best practice. So it will take time to get people on board, but once you have people supporting you, the results are easier, I think, from there onwards. Benji, over to you, maybe to share the Sishen and Kolomela specific examples.
No, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for the question. I think maybe to start, you will remember that in the slide that Pranil provided, we indicated that our audit process was also delayed by the outbreak of COVID-19. And therefore, our timeline of undertaking that audit will not necessarily be in a normal audit process, right? So where if it will take you from the self-assessment up until the stage 2 assessment, where it can take you 6 months to a year, ours took a bit longer because of the outbreak of COVID. But overall, some of the key learning that we have included issues around what IRMA standard requires and how we are used to doing the normal audit, and therefore finding a balance to say, yes, we complying to South African laws or permit protocols, and now that IRMA expects us to perform a bit higher in terms of that level, how do we take the team along into getting to that space? We were, of course, supported by the site leadership team and the subject matter expert at site, so change management did not necessarily become a big issue. Our issue has always been, how do we balance the work that we do on a day-to-day basis and aligning that to the IRMA standard requirements, and then we needed to find a balance into that space. You will see that in one of the slides where we said, what are the learnings from this process? We included collaboration, because we believe that there's certain work that gets done by the site subject matter experts, BU subject matter experts, and group subject matter experts. At the onset, we might not have done our internal stakeholder engagement planning properly. And as we grew into the process, we then learned to know that certain requirements have got specific subject matter experts, and how do you balance that process to make sure that when you need evidence, who is the right person to speak to? And then we are finding a balance into that space. Thank you.
Okay, helpful. We have another question, which is about, Pranil, earlier you mentioned better health education as a deliverable. And there's a question if maybe the bar is too low, and should the test not be whether or not employees have the right or access to quality health. And so maybe if you can address the issues and the concerns around health for employees and perhaps beyond in the community.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to, so Nandi's our executive of safety, health, and environment, and maybe Nandi, you can just give a quick overview in terms of what we are doing from an employee perspective, and then Benji can just highlight where we are in terms of our community health progress and how we manage our baseline studies in terms of ensuring what programs we initiate based on the collaborative process that we actually have within our communities and our areas of influence. But I'll start off with Nandi. Nandi, do you want to just maybe just give a quick overview from an employee perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Pranil. So we do have a very extensive health program that we are driving and facilitating within Kumba. And just a bit of context, as you would know, before a person could even start working for us, whether a permanent employee or a contractor employee and what we normally call a service provider, we require them to go through a medical surveillance to deem them fit or not fit to join the business. So through that program, we are then able to provide in terms of the medical status that they are in, and we drive our programs based on the baseline that we get or the data that we get from that medical surveillance. So we do have various programs which we are also supporting in our communities and the driving community here. But when you look at employees, the requirement of Kumba Iron Ore that each and every employee that works for us should have medical aid, number one. That is to make sure that they've got access to adequate health. Secondly, internally, we do provide health facilities that are free to all employees and service partners or contractors, as you may want to call them. And we ensure that each and every person, it's not discriminated against getting that service. So what then happens is when we get a profile, so we do our HCT or VCT, and then we also monitor heart health score, which is critical for us. And if we identify that a Nandi has got issues in a particular in the program, that we make sure we support that particular employee in improving their health and making sure that we can at least support them into a much healthier state where feasible. So in terms of measurement, I think we are really stooping low because it's a fundamental requirement that we require for Kumba. It's therefore not an either or in terms of compliance to that one. When it comes to community health, we also have programs where we have gone as far as supporting a full clinic that then offers programs to our communities, which we have the data of what findings are and what we are seeing in the communities. So it's a balanced approach because obviously we understand before any person could be a Kumba employee, they start by being a community member, which is why it's critical and important for us to support our communities from a health function. So I'm confident that we are well covered in ensuring that our employees are adequately supported from a medical perspective or health perspective.
We have only just a couple of minutes left. Alan was going to type into the Q&A, I hope, about IRMA 2.0, the revision process, but I want to use this opportunity. There was an important question that came in about the role of government and national and regional authorities, and how are they involved both by the mine site and also in the IRMA process. And I'll say first off, so Michelle, I'm going to go to you to talk about how do mining companies and auditors engage. How are mining companies asked to engage, and then also how do auditors engage with governments? Because we agree that a voluntary initiative is never going to rise to the importance of the role of government and law. It's why the first chapter in the IRMA standard is legal compliance, respecting the jurisdictions in which you're in, and this active relationship with government entities. And Michelle, can you say something about auditors as well, engaging them, and also expectations on companies in our last minute?
Sure. So first of all, there are places throughout the IRMA standard where there's a recognition of the relationship between the IRMA standard and national law, and indicating obviously there's an expectation to comply, that where IRMA standards are more rigorous, there's an expectation then to meet the IRMA standard, and that the IRMA standard doesn't go down to meet the local regulations. In the audits themselves, we have stakeholder engagement that occurs, and stakeholders is a very broad category. Government officials are considered part of that category. They may be health officials, they may be permitting agencies, they may be regulatory compliance agencies, they may be local law enforcement. So there are a lot of places where the auditors are asked to reach out and engage with relevant government officials in order to verify what the government's perspective is on the mine's performance and what their relationship is in terms of collaborating with the mine as well.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And thank you to all of you who made time to come to this event. So please don't be shy in reaching out. Davidzo Muchawaya is here as a resource to you. Michelle is a resource to you. And then, of course, both Kumba and Anglo American. We hope this is the beginning of a deeper conversation that civil society, mining customers, investors, and others have with these company representatives. And we're grateful for you all coming today and for the efforts of Anglo American and Kumba to voluntarily step up to this level of transparency and measuring your operations. And congratulations on releasing your reports.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.